Grace Whitmore had always believed that motherhood was a kind of quiet worship, a lifetime of giving without expecting anything in return, a sacred vow she had never once broken. Not when she was a young single mother working double shifts in a textile mill. Not when she sold her mother's jewelry to send her daughter Danielle to nursing school. Not when she emptied her savings to help Danielle build the life she wanted. For 74 years, she had walked through life with the soft strength of a woman who understood sacrifice. She had endured loneliness, grief, financial struggle, and the long, echoing decades of doing everything alone. But nothing could have prepared her for the cruelty she faced on what should have been the most tender day of her year, Mother's Day. When Danielle forced her to read that card aloud, every word sliced through her like rusted metal. "You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. Your time has passed." The room had gone silent, then erupted in laughter as if her pain were part of some cheap comedy. She remembered standing there, her favorite green dress trembling around her thin frame, her cheeks wet with tears while her daughter laughed behind cupped hands. Danielle's husband, Michael, laughed openly, loudly, carelessly, and even the children giggled because they saw adults doing it. That day, Grace walked out with dignity, but inside, she was a collapsing world. That night, she cried until dawn, but somewhere between the sobs and the silence, something inside her shifted. The years of humiliation, exploitation, dismissal, and disregard aligned into a single revelation. Her life had been given to people who didn't deserve her. She was not a burden. She had been the backbone of that family.
In the days that followed, Grace quietly rearranged the pieces of her life. She canceled automatic transfers, closed joint accounts, rewrote her will, and booked a one-way ticket to Nassau to see the beachfront condo she had secretly inherited years earlier. She hugged no one goodbye. She left no forwarding address. She left only silence behind her, a silence her family didn't notice until the money stopped. Only then did Danielle call. Not out of love but irritation. Grace did not answer. She didn't answer the next week, or the next. Her phone buzzed with messages that grew from annoyance to concern to anger. When Grace didn't show up for the kids' end-of-school events or answer the door, Danielle finally drove to her mother's house. What she found stunned her. The small home was spotless, organized, but empty, closets cleared, drawers empty, photos removed. On the dining table sat a single white envelope with Danielle's name on it. Inside were documents, proof of all the financial help Grace had given over the last decade, copies of canceled transfers, notices of closed accounts, and a printed message that read, "I have chosen peace. Do not contact me. Do not try to find me. I am not your responsibility, and you are no longer mine." Danielle panicked, but Michael scoffed, muttering that Grace was being dramatic again. Weeks passed. Grace was gone, and no one knew where. Life became uncomfortable for Danielle and her family. Bills piled up. The mortgage payment hit harder without Grace's quiet monthly deposit, and the cushioned, comfortable life they had taken for granted tightened like a noose. Still, they assumed Grace would return eventually. They assumed she needed them. They assumed they still owned some part of her. In Nassau, she discovered warmth she had been starved for: friendly neighbors, morning walks on white sand, ocean breezes that smelled of freedom, and a little community of seniors who welcomed her instantly. She attended book clubs, painting classes, morning yoga, and Sunday brunches. She bought herself a soft linen dress in sea green, ate fresh mangoes from the market, slept without fear of being judged, and laughed, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in years. Her condo overlooked the water, and every night she sat on her balcony, listening to the waves wash away the last remnants of her old life. Her heart healed slowly, like a wound learning sunlight again. She wrote letters she never sent, cooked meals she enjoyed alone, and learned that solitude was not loneliness, it was peace gifted to those who had suffered enough. Months went by. Her hair grew longer, her cheeks rosier, her steps lighter. For the first time since she was 29, Grace lived for herself. She became a familiar figure on the beach, the soft-spoken silver-haired woman who fed stray cats, collected seashells, and greeted every passerby with a warm "Good morning, sweetheart." She thought sometimes of her grandchildren with tenderness, but never of Danielle without pain. She knew she had made the right choice. 1 year later, on a gentle spring afternoon, Grace passed away quietly in her sleep, the ocean breeze drifting through her open balcony door. There was no fear in her final breaths, only peace. It took nearly 2 weeks before anyone in her old life realized she was gone. A lawyer's letter reached Danielle's mailbox, requesting her presence for a will reading. Danielle and Michael arrived in polished clothes and forced expressions of concern, expecting an inheritance, perhaps the house, maybe even the mysterious savings they always suspected she hid. They took their seats across from Mr. Franklin, the family lawyer who had known Grace for decades. He looked at them with a heaviness that made Danielle shift uncomfortably. "Before we begin," he said softly, "I must inform you that Grace passed away last week." Danielle inhaled sharply, not out of grief, but out of shock, confusion, and a sharp sting of guilt she would never admit aloud. Michael muttered a strained "Oh, I see." Then Mr. Franklin opened a folder, removed the will, and began reading. Danielle leaned forward eagerly. Michael sat up straighter. But as the words unfolded, their faces drained of color. Grace had left them nothing. Not a cent. Not the house. Not the investments. Not the condo. Nothing. Her entire estate, nearly $400,000, the Nassau property, her home, her investments, her jewelry, was donated to a foundation for abandoned seniors. The only thing she left behind for her grandchildren was a conditional trust fund accessible at age 25, dependent entirely on whether they had shown genuine love and maintained voluntary contact with her. Danielle and Michael were completely excluded. The room felt colder as the lawyer read the final part. "There is one more thing," he said, lifting an envelope trimmed with gold edges. Grace left a private letter for Danielle. Danielle's hands trembled, not with sorrow, but a growing, sick fear. She opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single handwritten letter in her mother's small, delicate cursive. It read, "My dear Danielle, I loved you more than I ever loved myself. I raised you alone. I worked until my fingers bled. I gave you everything I had, my time, my health, my money, my dreams, my youth. I forgave every hurt. I endured every disrespect. I swallowed pain until I forgot the sound of my own voice. But love without respect is not love, it is servitude. And I finally chose to stop being your servant. You called me a burden. You laughed when my heart was breaking. You forgot me when I was sick. You remembered me only when you needed something. And yet, I still hoped you would someday see me as more than a wallet, more than a babysitter, more than an inconvenience in your perfect world. You never did. So I leave you nothing, not out of spite, but out of truth. You did not lose my money today. You lost me years ago, piece by piece, without ever noticing. I hope someday, long after the anger fades, you understand what it cost me to love you. And what it cost you to lose me. Mom Danielle's fingers slipped, and the letter fell onto the lawyer's desk as her throat tightened. The room spun. A hot, suffocating wave of guilt crashed through her stomach. Michael reached for her shoulder, but she pushed him away with a trembling hand. Tears blurred her vision, heavy and unstoppable, the kind of tears that come too late, years too late. She saw in that moment every selfish act, every cruel word, every time she had dismissed her mother's pain as drama, every dollar she accepted without gratitude, every moment she failed to love the woman who had given her everything. And now Grace was gone, beyond apologies, beyond repair, beyond forgiveness. The will had broken the family, not because Grace was cruel, but because the truth finally shattered the lies Danielle had been living comfortably inside. Outside the lawyer's office, life went on, people walked, cars passed, children laughed, but Danielle felt as if she had fallen through a trapdoor into a hollow world where her mother no longer existed. She had expected an inheritance but received a mirror instead, one that showed her everything she never wanted to see. Grace, meanwhile, left the world exactly as she had lived it, quietly, lovingly, and with dignity. Her estate funded meals for elderly women abandoned by their children. Her condo became a holiday home for widowed seniors who had spent their lives in loneliness. Her jewelry went to a charity auction. Her house became a safe haven for women starting over. Grace's name became a blessing whispered by strangers who felt her kindness long after she was gone. And in Nassau, where the sea met the sky, where her laughter had returned after decades of silence, her ashes were scattered along the shore she loved. The waves carried her away gently, lovingly, the way her family never had. Danielle stood there long after the will reading ended, clutching her mother's letter to her chest. She tried to breathe, but the weight of regret pressed down like a stone. She had spent her life believing her mother would always be there, always forgiving, always giving, always bending. She had mistaken unconditional love for infinite tolerance. And Grace had finally taught her, with her absence, the greatest lesson of all: even the softest hearts break. Even the quietest souls walk away. Even the most patient mothers have limits. And sometimes the only justice a mother can give is the truth she leaves behind. Grace had left no revenge, only truth. But sometimes truth is the sharpest inheritance of all.